So that's the sign, you know, and I'll show you a picture of it later. But anyway, there are video relay interpreters as well. There's, you can have a video phone on your mobile device. A video relay interpreter can come up, or you can speak to your other friends. You know, we used to use a teletype machine for the deaf, and it was coupled with a hearing phone, and it's really obsolete right now. Most deaf people don't use it because of video phones. And then there's closed captioning, and that's required now. It has to. If there's nothing captioned, that people don't have access. So anything news and movies and TV access, everything's captioned. And the hard of hearing people will benefit from that as well, those who can understand some sign. Or if they don't, they caption can help hard of hearing people. And then we have text messaging, which of course has become really popular in the deaf community. And then we have email. So those are all different technologies that people use. This is what a video phone looks like. And there are different companies. There's Sorensen, Z5, V3, and deaf people can choose who they want as a provider. The FCC is who provides this video phone service. And if you're hearing, you can't use it. It's only for people who are deaf or who use video phones. And anything that you can think of to use for a telephone is what deaf people use their video phones for. So it has broadened access for deaf people. So this is how the system works. If I call my mom, for example, my mom's hearing, she doesn't know sign. So I'll call her on the video phone and I'll get an interpreter. It's my mom. It's not my mom, obviously, but you know, just pretend that's my mom. So I'll have a conversation with my mom. But instead of speaking, I'm signing to the interpreter. The interpreter sees me and then communicates that to my mom, and it goes both ways. And that's how the video phone works. And when I use a video phone with a deaf person, I don't need to have the intermediary of an interpreter. I just call my deaf friends or deaf people I know at work through a video phone, and I have direct communication. And I don't have to wait for an interpreter or any of that. So it's the same service, but it's not a relay. You know, and also interpreters always identify themselves by their number. I'm interpreter 6113, and it takes more time to have an interpreter because it's 3 days. Then there's something called video remote interpreting, except that as opposed to it's in 2 separate places. Let me explain it, and it'll be more clear. It's very similar to the video phone. Like if you go to court, or maybe a medical appointment, or there's a last-minute situation, you can do video remote interpreting. You have to pay for that service, but in video remote interpreting, you actually have an interpreter showing up. If I need an interpreter at a medical appointment, for example, I would have an interpreter in a medical exam. It's an example. Like maybe there's an emergency last minute or something happens, and I don't know. And they will have, wherever I go, they'll have interpreters, and they have that access to a computer and a video phone through the computer, like my laptop. I can set that up, and then I can get an interpreter. If I needed to communicate with this hearing person at the last minute, I would have an interpreter on my video phone at wherever I take my laptop.
Is there a way we
Let
can
me show you
click
an
on that
example.
link right
I have an example.
What would you like to do? You want to show a website?
Yeah,
Oh, you want to just
this
click
one
that
right
link?
here.
Yeah, okay, sure.
American Sign Language Interpreting Services has been a leading innovator in interpreting services since 1989. We provide support in field government, business, and education. Video Remote Interpreting, or VRI, facilitates virtual communication between the deaf and hearing persons with cost-saving advantages, 24-hour availability, ease of use, and reliability. We have call centers nationwide and
You want me to restart it?
with professional and
It's fine.
qualified interpreters. When you call one of our centers, we match the type of
That's an
interpreter
example
you
right
need
there.
for every call.
Thank you for calling our Video Communication Service Department. How may I help you?
Here's the caption.
Yes, I need an ASL interpreter, please.
Okay, we can set that up for you right now. No problem.
We provide support for American Sign Language, English, Spanish, and trilingual needs, as well as other sign and spoken languages on request. VRI with American Sign Language interpreting services also provides great cost advantages to you. By paying per minute, you're paying for the actual usage of an interpreter and not the travel expenses or time spent in the waiting room of an on-site interpreter. We offer cost-saving rates to fit your specific needs that are priced competitively with many local services, and we are able to often provide a lower-cost solution. There are no emergency fees, and we are available 24/7.
Oh, we can stop that now.
Another advantage of
Obviously,
VRI,
captioning is
American
really
Sign
awesome.
Language interpreting services, is the lack
I
of
just wanted to show you an
proprietary.
example of what that was like. That's good enough. So, but captioning there, obviously you were laughing. It was very, very bad. You know, sometimes that happens, and that's.
I did have a question about that. So we've talked about captioning and ways to be able to integrate that into our products and services. With this particular example, I'm really surprised that a video about a product for video remote interpreting would not have an effective closed caption associated. Do you have any background of why it is in this particular case?
I don't have an answer for that yet. So you're saying, I didn't get all the captions, so that the captions didn't always match with what they were saying, right? So, okay. And I think it's just because with the 21st Century Communications Act, for YouTube, since this is just a clip, and you're not required to provide captions.
I see.
But if this was, how do I say it? So if there was, like, you know, if you watch something on Netflix or something on TV, and then it was reprogrammed onto the internet, it would be required to have accurate captioning. But since this is uploaded onto YouTube, I don't know the exact wording, but it's not required to have accurate captioning, I guess. So it just uses the auto-generated captioning that is produced on YouTube in this case. That's my guess.
No, I understand that. Thanks.
Can we go back to the PowerPoint presentation, please?
So VRI doesn't always work, and it really depends on the situation. For example, if there's a surgery happening, you can't use VRI during surgery because you really need a live person in case you lose access to the internet. If you're in an emergency situation, you know, many of those, you wouldn't use VRI because it's not dependable. It really depends on having access to Wi-Fi, so it's better to have a live interpreter in many situations. This is the obsolete teletype device for the deaf. And you type in it, you put your phone down. I've used that for years. You would call, and if you wanted to call a hearing person, you would have to call through a relay interpreter. But it wasn't really an interpreter, it was a relay person. And they would just speak. I would type, I would wait, they would speak, then it would go back and forth, but it was a, for example, if I called a deaf person, it was a lot faster because I didn't have that intermediary having to type everything I said. I would type it, but it wasn't, there weren't so many pauses. But this is it's a more reasonably priced for people who can afford, you know, some of the access to a video phone, that computer access, internet access. UBI Duo 2 and DSHS, where I work, they have that, and different people have that. If there's a last-minute situation and some client needs help with food stamps or something, and we don't have an interpreter, we can do this, and type back and forth. It's like texting in a way, back and forth. You know, and if somebody doesn't have, what the problem is that English often is not the first language, and so this in an emergency situation is good enough, but sometimes there's problems with the English communication, because it is in written English. And then we have, and these are visual aids, they're called. Like we have an alert to allow us to know that some auditory sounds are happening, like somebody knocking at the door, or there's a light that will be hooked up to the doorbell, and it will tell me that somebody's there. There's a fire alarm. There's a fire. I have a vibrator on my bed that will wake me up, and that's an alert to tell me that there's a fire. If a baby is crying, it's also something that vibrates on my bed if I'm sleeping in my bed or something. So these are auditory alerts, visual alerts for auditory sounds. And this is tips on how to communicate with a deaf person. Of course, an interpreter is a viable thing, but if you want to avoid communication errors, getting an interpreter is really important. But it really depends on the deaf person's preference, because some deaf people might not really understand American Sign Language. Sometimes deaf people, because of their own barriers, they might need something called a CDI, which is a certified deaf interpreter, who will come in with the hearing interpreter and then interpret. And that ensures less miscommunication. And it really satisfies the needs of somebody who might have developmental disabilities, who might not understand as well, bringing in a deaf interpreter. You can also use paper and pencil, you know, if, like I'll do that in some situations when I go places. If they don't, I need to communicate with a hearing person, and I'll write short sentences. It won't be long. Don't do that. If you do use pen and pencil with a deaf person, keep it short, keep it brief, and simple. And it really depends on the deaf person. Some deaf people didn't grow up with education. They moved from another country. There's other reasons why keeping things simple. And sometimes, depending on their disability, you might have to use pictures, drawings. You know, texting, because text messaging is great. You go back and forth. It really does well. And some deaf people are really good at lip reading. You know, if they were hard of hearing, or they went to school and they learned speech growing up, but you can't assume that deaf people are good lip readers. Always make sure you can ask first, and then you can either use pen and paper, you can use gesture. There's other ways. You know, if you can fingerspell it all and sign, deaf people will love it. And it's better than nothing. Don't be scared to use whatever signs you know, especially if you don't have any paper and pen. You know, fingerspell slow, you can ask them to fingerspell slow, and you'll be communicating. Don't be scared. And then, of course, gesture. That people are very visual. You can point, you can use iconic signs or gestures, and deaf people will appreciate that as well. And you know, for some, if you've taken some sign language, or if you take sign language classes, and at HSDC, Hearing Deaf Speech and Deafness Center, we provide sign language classes. I don't know how much it costs. I think it's not bad. It's an 8-week class, but you can find out about how much it would actually cost. But if you're interested, we do provide sign language classes for anybody. And then you can always resort to drawing. If people don't, if the deaf person doesn't understand, you can draw pictures. You're trying to get something across, you know. And if you're trying to say something about police, that you know, these are all different options you have for communicating with them.
Okay. This is an emerging technology. This is a product called Motion Savvy. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's It's something that's supposed to come out in the summer of this year. And what it is it's a device that uses the leap motion technology. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's a virtual reality technology. But you basically sign into it, and it can produce text or speech. So you sign into it, and then there is a speaker, and so like it's basically a communication tool between deaf and hearing people, and you sign into it, and then it spits out using text or speech, and then for the hearing person, they can talk into it, and it spits into the machine, and it comes into text, or it comes into text, or I don't think it comes in sign language, but I think it's just text. There are limitations to this because with sign language, it's very, very expressive. You know, like there's a lot of facial expressions, and that I don't think that is really there yet. But there is. I just wanted to show this because there are some new emerging technology to try to bridge the communication gap between deaf people and hearing people. And from my understanding, this product is pretty expensive. You can get it on a tablet device, or you can get it on a desktop. The desktop requires an internet connection. The tablet does not require an internet connection. It's built in with a lot of words. And then I think, from what I read, you can start adding more vocabulary, more words. So you can put signs, and it'll start adding words to it. So I think that was kind of cool to show.
Kathy, Devin, I have a question. So is there any technology that you know of that goes in the reverse direction, which would recognize the audible speech signal and convert that into a sign language?
Not yet. Not yet.
Yeah, I guess
That's not
not
in
yet.
development.
That is something that is still in the development. Any other questions? Okay. I'm going to talk a little bit about some assistive technology for people who are hard of hearing. They have hearing aids. So, as you can imagine, a person with some residual hearing, but it's significant damage, they might wear something like hearing aids or cochlear implants. It depends on the degree of hearing loss you might have. So if you have a mild or moderate hearing loss, you might wear hearing aids that simply just amplifies the sounds that can hopefully produce better sounds and better speech. Of course, when you have hearing loss, when you have hearing aids, hearing aids does not cure hearing loss. It just amplifies the sounds around you. So it's not like wearing glasses where it corrects your sight. It can significantly improve, but it does not cure. And then for people who are maybe deaf, but they have experience with speech, or I'll take that back. You could be born deaf, and the parents decide to provide or decides to give your child a cochlear implant. That's a better option. So these are some around here are some devices that can aid communication. So we have a caption telephone. We have an amplified telephone that is specifically designed for people with hearing loss. This right here is a neck loop. Some hearing aids are equipped with something called telecoils, which is an electromagnetic device inside the hearing aids that can connect to telephones, connect to rooms that have specially designed electromagnetic. How do I explain it? It's an electromagnetic device that can connect like a microphone to the room, to the person's hearing aids. And then, of course, there is Bluetooth. So hearing aids have Bluetooth capability. We connect to a streaming device, and the streaming device we connect to a range of products such as a smartphone, a laptop computer, a television, different devices that are equipped with Bluetooth. That is kind of the basis of where we're at with technology today. I have a Bluetooth stream device, and I can connect to my smartphone without having a smartphone go up against my ears. It's a really cool technology because it produces clear sounds. It just goes straight to my hearing aids, which is really nice. Yes.
Does long-term use of hearing aids eventually create more damage to the ear?
Can you say that one time?
Does long-term use of the hearing aid create more damage to the ear?
With hearing aids? Not necessarily. It depends on how loud it is. And I think anything that is louder than 80 decibels, 85 decibels over a long period of time can produce some irreversible hearing loss. So you just have to kind of you have to think about how loud the sounds are. But yes, if the sounds are really, really loud and you do it for a long period of time, it can produce some irreversible damage. I'm not an expert on that. That's something that audiologists can explain a lot better. But yeah, I mean, I know, and you know that is something that that people who study, you know, the ears are really concerned about is people who have the earbuds or the headphones and play loud music for a really long period of time. And we're already starting to see a lot of signs that people are starting to experience hearing loss. And when we say hearing loss, that means not just something that you can reverse, go back. It's something that you have to, you know, once you start to experience it, you have to find ways to manage it. Yeah. Okay. There are some other technology. So this is called a pocket talker. This is a device that's pretty common for a lot of people who maybe are low income, can't afford hearing aids. This is a device that works really well. You just simply wear opt to wear a set of headphones or headphones that connect to this device. And this is a little microphone, and you kind of just pass around to a person. It kind of has there's a range because it's kind of it's a wired device, so you kind of pass around. But the cool thing about it is it just remains all background noise, so you only are hearing what's coming out of the microphone. This down here is called an echo system, and this is simply a device that allows it's a microphone and receiver system. So the speaker would wear this microphone system, and it's something that you ought to put in your pocket with a little flat-hole microphone, and the person could move around. The person with hearing loss would wear this receiver set, to wear a loop that can connect to your hearing aids, or to wear headphones. And it's something kind of this, but it provides more mobility so that the person wearing the microphone can kind of walk around. And also, there are some microphones where you have multiple receivers. So maybe there's 4 people who need the echo system. So 4 people listen to one microphone. This right here is called, this is kind of an example of the infection loop system. Try to show it. So this blue line right here is like it's the loop system or the electromagnetic device. So there are people inside the room who may have hearing loss, and if they're able to activate this thing called T-coil, the T-coil will connect to the loop system, and the person with the microphone, they can speak into it, and maybe there's already a speakers, but this loop system is a little bit different in that the microphone connects to the loop system and it goes directly to the person's ear. So for people with hearing loss, this is a pretty good system because it provides a lot of clarity and it just permeates all the background noise. So you don't have to, you won't be able to hear anything else. You just won't hear what's coming out of the microphone. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the laws that we use for people who are deaf or hard of hearing. They use the ADA and they use the ADA as a tool to for accessibility purposes. So Title I, for example, is about employment. Title II is about public accommodations. So for a deaf person, they want to go to a government meeting, they can request an interpreter. Title III is about, what's it called? It's about public, so Title II is public services, sorry, and then Title III is public accommodations. And that's kind of where you talk about mandating, accessibility features, so like wheelchair ramps, making sure that places are accessible. And then I want to bring up the 21st Century Communications Video Accessibility Act. This has kind of been a pretty big moment for people who are hard of hearing or deaf, because it requires that if you want to watch the internet, or if you watch the internet and there's a program that was previously on television and then it was uploaded on the internet, it requires that they provide closed captioning. Now that's not to say that there's there's a video that's directly to the internet that wasn't programmed on television. It means that there are some cases where it's a video clip, or if it's just an internet video, you're not required to have captioning. So there are exceptions to the rule. However, I just want to point that out because it's kind of I take full advantage of it. I was someone who grew up hard of hearing, and when I watch television, I always have the closed captioning on. When I watch the internet, I always try to watch something that has closed captioning. That helps me understand what's going on. Okay. This is our contact information. If you have any interest in contacting us about anything, feel free to contact us. So that's all. Thank you. Any questions?
I have a question.
Jessica?
I was wondering if you guys know BSL, and if not, if that's like.
Can you speak up?
If you guys know BSL, and if not, if it's like a hindrance on other English-speaking cultures when we have different sign language.
Right. Languages are different. Like Korean, they have their sign language. My friend also signs French. You look at the body language of things and you do the gesturing, because the sign language is not the same. People think ASL is universal, but it's not. It's as any other language. ASL, English, French, they speak French, so they have French sign language. So you go to France, if you don't know French, then same type of thing, whether you're hearing or deaf. Everybody has their own language and their own culture. Did that answer your question?
Kind of. I mean, we, as an English speaker, I think that when I go to an English-speaking country, I'll be comfortable. But as an ASL speaker, would you have problem talking to someone who speaks ESL, even though the written language is the same?
What's the letter that you're saying at the start?
ESL.
B as in boy?
British language.
Okay. I wasn't familiar with that.
I've not gone to other countries, but I have met people who use Korean Sign Language. I don't understand them. I absolutely don't understand them. It is difficult. But you use facial expression, gestures, and you get that understand who it's going. But if I go to France, I try to learn what they're talking about. I follow the facial expression, and then I pick up the sign language as I go along if I'm in that country. And so if I'm hearing, it's kind of like, do I know what you're saying? No, I don't. But you know, we communicate, we talk, you figure out what's going on, whether you're hearing or deaf. You understand the language, and you pick up that language as you hear.
And so much of the expression is on your face, so I'm able to pick that up more easily than a hearing person who goes, because they don't have it. It's all based on hearing. Because I can see, and the face is the grammar, and that's the same. Thank you.
I wanted to ask you, isn't there? I read this somewhere. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought there was a world deaf organization where there's kind of some sort of convention, and there is kind of like this intermediate deaf language that kind of bridges the gap. Like there's like this it's not official, it's not a real deaf language, but it's something that it kind of bridges the gap between different deaf languages, if you will.
I'm not aware of that.
Okay.
But again, people do come to Deaf Expo, that's international. But as far as the language itself, I'm not sure if they have an international language or not.
I have a question for Hod. How has your study of psychology impacted your work as a client advocate for the deaf and the hard of hearing community?
What do you mean, the psychology of applying? How do you want me to apply that? I'm not quite sure what the question is.
Oh, I mean, I guess however she wants to interpret. I was just curious. I was reading the backgrounds of wondering how her education translated into her work, if she sees any, kind of things in the community of ASL in terms of the way that they communicate and how that's manifested in ways that they're thinking, ways that you express yourself.
Interpreters are a little bit, I'm not sure what you're asking.
Do you mean like how her education, like how her education from college kind of helped her with her work, how it changed her worldview?
Yeah. I guess kind of how her education impacted her work, if she sees any similarities or any conclusions from that. You know, how her education has.
I think we'll just stick to the first question.
Yeah.
So, can you say that again?
So the original question is, how did your educational background impact your work? Has it impacted your work in any way? Or?
You mean, like psychologically, or it's my education. You know, I work in mental health, so I'm doing a lot of that. So, well, I really like education. I love learning, and I like working with people and helping them. They might have issues. But I don't know if that's really, I don't know. It's a question I've never really thought about. You know, it's almost like my work is like social work. I work one-on-one with people, and and some have mental health issues, dual diagnosis, but really, I think that psychology has really helped me. But I'm not a psychologist at all. But I think that who I am and what I've become, yes, has influenced my life.
I have two questions. I used to work at AMC a long time ago, and I know that
You what?
I used to work at the movie theater.
At a what theater?
At AMC movie theater.
Okay.
So I know they have these headphones they give out if you can't hear the speakers and whatnot. So have you used those before?
I have.
Okay.
Yes.
I was gonna ask how effective are those? And my second question was, like, when you're watching a sporting event and you have the captions on, is it difficult to watch and read at the same time? Or
Yes. So there was two questions. One
Yeah, the
was
first one
how
was the
effective
headphones.
the caption glasses are, and then the second one was about watching sporting events and whether it kind of distracts
Yes.
seeing the scores and whatever is on the bottom of the screen. Yeah.
I can see that.
So with your first question, there are two types of devices that I've seen, and I think at the AMC theaters they have what's called the Captoo. Is it the one where you plug into you have a device that you put in the cup holder and it has this little LCD screen that you kind of adjust, or is it just the glasses that it's the device that you put over your head?
No, it's more of like a headset that you just put over your ears and you can
The
hear.
headset, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that the captions are accurate, but sometimes what I've noticed is there's kind of a lag, or how do I say it? So when the voices don't always, it's not always match up with the text that's on the screen. And then sometimes I've had problems, like some technical difficulties, where the captions don't work at all, so I have to go out to the concession stand and replace it. So, but for the most part, it works pretty well. To answer your second question, I do watch a lot of sporting events, and I'm kind of on the fence about having the captions on when I watch sporting events, because I don't really care what they say. I'm just there to watch whatever's going on. But I know for a lot of deaf people, they want to have the captions on because they want to know what is going on. It's a way to make sure that they feel included, that they know what everybody else is hearing. So. And for accessibility reasons, it is, I think, but I'll give you an example. At the city of Portland, they recently passed an ordinance to require the captions to be on all the time in all public places. And that includes if you go to a bar, if you go to a restaurant, if you go to a government building, if the TV is on, they are required to have the captions on. And that is because, in case there's ever an emergency, if there's ever a situation where something happens, it's important to have some communication available for people who are deaf or hard of hearing. And this is also, I argue that captions is not just for people who are deaf or hard of hearing; it's for people who may miss a word here and there. It's a way to, if it's a really noisy environment, you can read the captions to kind of catch the information you're missing.
I have a question for Mark. So you mentioned that you work with people one-on-one. Is that more preferred to work with people who have hearing loss or are deaf to work one-on-one, or is it better to work, or do they prefer working differently? Because I'm doing research on how accessibility is in an educational setting, and I researched that inclusion, which is having students with disabilities work with in a general education classroom, is more preferred. So.
You're talking about my background growing up, or are you talking about now, currently?
It could be both.
Well, I think I use both, one-on-one and group. I think in terms of my clientele who I work with, it's usually one-on-one, but I do have some groups, if I go to a group environment, have a small meeting with staff, we're different, I like that, because I like the views of different professionals when I get together. But with my clients, I often do work one-on-one, This way I have the ability to make sure everything is clear, understood, and I'm focused on that one client. But I'm often in group settings, which I also appreciate the stimulation I get from other professionals and people.
Who else has questions?
Do you have any questions?
I'm just checking because I know there were a lot of questions that I've been thinking about. Nate?
Yeah. So I was just wondering, like, I know there's a lot of laws with certifications and stuff like that. Do you guys feel like those kind of take away from, or like if somebody was trying to provide a service for ASL interpreters, does that take away from being able to provide those services, or do you think that helps because they're really strict and you have to be like super proficient, but like if somebody was trying to volunteer and they're kind of proficient, then they won't be able to volunteer?
Oh, I see.
You mean for interpreters required certification? I think that's really, if I don't have a certified interpreter, I can't trust that they're going to be qualified to work for me. Certified ensures deaf people that you have the qualifications, you've gone through the work, you're nationally certified. Deaf people really are requiring certified interpreters. I don't think it's a hindrance. I think it's really an asset. It's a requirement. I need full communication and I need the trust of a certified interpreter.
I have a question. So are the certifications for other countries, other countries' sign language interpreters similar to ASL? Like, did you find the standards to be pretty easy to follow along with ASL?
I'm not familiar with other countries. I know here we're really strict, but in other countries, the requirements, I don't know their system. I don't know what is required of them to become an interpreter. I have no idea what goes on in other countries.
I have a question for the interpreter since we're talking about interpreting so much. What your like the education background? So how did you come about becoming an interpreter?
Interpreters go to, they must have at least a bachelor's degree, and they have to take an interpreter training program. There's many programs that are provided. And then they have to take the time to get out in the community and become certified. But that certification is done on a national level, and those are all required as part of the process. But some people are children of deaf adults. They're interpreters. They don't have to go to interpreter programs. They might not have to go to interpreter programs, but they have to, they must have certification. They have to become a certified interpreter. Knowing sign language and interpreting are two different skills.
Question from there. Is it possible for a child under the age of 18 to become certified and act as maybe power of attorney for their parents? Not power of attorney is the wrong word, but yeah.
No.
Absolutely not.
So again, I think in order to become a certified interpreter, at least in the state of Washington, you have to have a bachelor's degree. It could be in anything. And you have to take a special certification test to become a certified interpreter. But it's really, really looked down upon for a family member to speak for like a deaf parent. Just because it happens quite often that maybe a deaf person goes to the emergency room, and the deaf person requests to have a live interpreter, and maybe that the child's there, and the doctor says, well, can we just use your daughter or your son to interpret the conversation? And the deaf parent usually feels uncomfortable with that, or the deaf child feels very comfortable with that because they're dealing with very, very sensitive information, and it can be emotional, and that's why it's really best to bring in an interpreter, a professional interpreter who can be professional about their work and interpret for that person. You have a question?
Yeah, Devin, you mentioned in the state of Washington talking about interpretation. I'm wondering, is there a national standard? Do states have any control? Because I know with medicine, when you get an MD, you're certified in the entire U.S. But I know that for accounting, you pass a CPA board exam for one state in particular. So I was wondering what that system looks like.
Can you answer that question? I don't know the answer to that.
I'm not that knowledgeable about that. You can get a hold of a registry interpreter for deaf, because I'm not a skilled interpreter. I don't know what kind of questions can be directed to RIE, registry interpreter for deaf. Like I said, I'm not that skilled.
But I will say that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there are different fields. Like there are legal interpreting, there are medical interpreting. Is that right? Yeah. If you're really interested in exploring that, contact the RIE.
Final questions from anybody we didn't hear from yet that might have a question? It's your last chance.
I want to say something
Yes.
as an interpreter, just to let you know I'm not trying to be rude when a specific question is asked of the interpreter. We as interpreters, this is kind of out of my role right now, but I thought Access Class should take advantage. But interpreters are here to work, and it's enough just to do our work and interpret and try to understand everything clearly. So for us to add our comments, like I'm doing now, is not something that's appropriate. So that's why I didn't mean to be rude and just ignore this is for the interpreter, but it's not part of our job. They're your presenters.
All right. Thank
We're
you.
their voices.
Good to know. Thank you.
Yeah.
Brett has a question.
So for when you're conversing, would it be more appropriate to look towards somebody who has hearing loss, or would it be more appropriate to look towards the interpreters?
It's always appropriate to look at the person that you're intending to talk to. Absolutely. Now, I think it's what?
Was it the deaf person?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I would really look with the deaf person, look in their eyes, because if you're looking at the interpreter, you can offend the deaf person. So it means you're talking to the interpreter and not the deaf person. And the deaf person can watch you and the interpreter pretty much at the same time.
I also do want to add that, but from my personal experiences, I do see the person that is speaking to a deaf person, I find them often speaking to the interpreter, and they're often looking at them, and really you should be looking at the deaf person. That's just the more appropriate gesture. But I think people sometimes lose sight and they forget that because it's easy for us just to talk to the person that knows how to talk. So, but yeah, so keep that in mind.
I don't think we're done with class yet.
Any more questions? Are we good?
All right. Good. Thank you very much for your participation. All right. Yes. So definitely happy to have Ha and Devin here, as well as Kathy and Jane. Please fill out your evaluation forms, and I'll collect those before we're done. And other than that, I will see everybody on Thursday. All right. Thanks so much for doing this, Ben. I really appreciate this.
Yeah.
so much. Extremely helpful. It's a very rich dimension to our class and our education, and it provides an opportunity that many of us don't normally get.
I did a little bit of a
research on that. Really good
yeah, the RID has like a website. Oh yeah.
So let me get you.
Let's.
Yes. Get this. Is it alright if I have a copy of your slides to distribute? Okay. All right. And let's see, what was it again? It was, let's see, the file was.
Yeah, there's a lot of them. Can you scroll down?
Okay, yeah.
Oh, I guess it's the first one. So.
Oh, right there. Okay.
Oh, no, the first one.
That one. Got it. There you go. That is. Oops, sorry about that. It's right here.
How did it jump from here to there?
I don't know. That's pretty weird. All right, let's get your.
Oh yeah. Oh, you sure? Yeah. Do a presentation, yeah. Maybe like next week, you know.
Filled out sign up sheets.
But yeah, let's.
He sent out an email and I wrote
But like I said, like we should like try to make an effort so that like the format is the same on all of our slides.
Oh, yeah.
So that it's like. Oh yeah, we can change that. I'm just talking about the way that the slides are laid out. You know what I mean?
It was so hard for me to get the letters. I was like, I could
Yeah, I don't really care what the scheme is, you know, but just the way that each slide like looks. So, like when I look up here and then like.
Yes. Good.
Yeah.
Oh, you mentioned that doing all the underlines.
Oh, well, that, yeah, those. But I made these so
Tonight, yeah, I worked on we were able to take some information that was there twice and kind of reformat it. And so what we're going to do is we might still change the flow of things, but I like a lot of these screen implementations.
Sure. This.
He's got the data. And also, you know, what how I'm going to do feedback from today and from your buddies.